Welcome to the Resilient Mindset Podcast, an exciting new podcast by Resilience Queen, Justine Martin. Justine is the owner and founder of the Resilient Mindset, a division of the Justine Martin Corporation. Justine draws on her years of experience and knowledge consulting with clients to develop and sustain a positive mindset. Focused on igniting your passion, purpose and power, follow the Resilience Queen each week as she delves into the mind of her guests, exploring fascinating stories and inspiring journeys.
Bill is a seasoned entrepreneur and C-level executive, founding his first company at the age of 21 and learning from every win and, more importantly, every failure. Bill sold his first success story to an ASX-listed company in 2016 and later became their CEO and MD. More recently, Bill held C-level executive roles at a larger listed Australian business. Both companies experienced peak increase of over 300% to their share price during his tenure. Bill's mission is to help leaders create high-performance cultures while managing the impact on their emotional state. Bill is a straight talker and his keynote provides valuable tactical information and real-world stories to motivate leaders to do more. Welcome, Bill, to the Resilience Mindset Podcast. How are you today?
I'm great, and thanks for having me. It's great to be on.
You're welcome. So tell me, Bill, what does resilience mean to you?
It means quite a lot, actually. I've struggled with a lot of anxiety and bouts of depression over my life, and being resilient has helped me not only get through those bouts of mental sort of health issues, but also in my business life, where I think, if I had to pick one character trait of the most successful business people I know that helps them succeed, is that resilience. And I heard someone call it the shock absorber for life, resilience, and that's how I like to think about it as well.
I've never heard it called that way. I like that definition. Yeah, wow. And it is. That is it. I mean, none of us can get through life without having an adversity.
Yeah, exactly. And I think part of the way I look at resilience is it's not only about how you cope with things, but also sort of having expectations that things are going to happen and it's not all going to be smooth sailing, so that when you do get that bump in the road, whether that's in business or in life, that that part of that resilience is just knowing it's coming and being prepared for it and having some ways to cope and deal with those moments.
Yeah, that's right. So what's an adversity that you've personally faced, and how did you draw on your resilience to cope?
Yeah, so I've been lucky enough to have pretty smooth sort of personal life. I haven't had any major deaths in families and things like that, which I'm very lucky on. But I've had some really hairy moments in my business life, and which have really translated into pretty major parts of my personal life. One that springs to mind the most is, about 2008, I started a business. It took me a year or so to get it going, and we got our first massive client. It was a lot of money to us back then, and we were in a position where we finally got the business to work after putting quite a bit of our own money into it to try and make it work. And at the last moment when the bill was due to be paid, it wasn't. We chased it through the courts and spent tens of thousands of dollars of our own money chasing money that was already owed to us, and it was a significant sum for a 27-year-old. It was, I think it was $280,000 plus we spent about $30,000 chasing it. And this is after trying to build up a business for 2 years. So it was kind of the final thing that we finally made it. It worked. And with that in mind, being maybe a little bit naive, I organised the wedding for 2010, thinking that the money will be paid by then. And we got to a stage where we got months out from the wedding. No money was there, but not only did the money not come, but we also threw, I think it was $30,000 chasing that money as well. We literally didn't have money to have our wedding, pay suppliers. We had to find ways to make it all happen at the last moment. My wife and I, to this day, it wasn't really a happy time in our lives, our wedding. The night, of course, was fantastic, and we wanted it to happen. The union was great, but the actual time in our lives was pretty horrible. And I look back at wedding photos now, we were pale, I was overweight. I could see the stress in my face. People say I look younger today than I did, 10 years ago because of that period of my life. That really created the first bout of. I never really experienced anxiety before that. I didn't even know what it was really. And I woke up one morning, or I didn't wake up actually. I was watching TV, and I started to struggle to breathe. I thought I was having a heart attack, which I think most people that have their first panic attack feel like they're having a heart attack. My wife came downstairs, rushed me to the hospital, thinking I'm having a heart attack. I laugh about it now, but it's kind of a nervous laughter. But they sort of knew pretty quickly that it wasn't that. They did all the tests, and from that point on, I dealt with pretty severe bouts of depression. All the things that you hear about, people talk about, but you sort of can't understand. The sitting in your car and crying before you can get into the house or go into
I've done that.
Yeah, right. It's just weird that everyone experiences similar things. That it's in similar ways, and I was lucky enough to be able to talk.
And shunned as well, Bill. Like all of us face some kind of feelings and emotions and stuff like that, but it's only really been recently that people are now sharing and like on podcasts and in the media and stuff on Are You Okay Day and all of that. Whereas these are conversations that should have been had years ago. These are conversations that we should have been taught through as a young child all the way through, not when you get to crisis point, now, I might talk about it to someone. These are things that, we need to be teaching the next generations as they come through as well. Would you agree?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because I've got a blokey group of mates and we catch up over a beer. And I remember the last catch up, just comically now, I was telling them some things that my therapist had told me. And I'm sure that probably didn't happen 20 years ago at the pub, It's become more acceptable to have those kind of conversations. And the funny thing is, I do keynotes in my business, and a lot of keynotes for businesses, keynote speaking, and I do it on growth and the customer journey and on leadership. And I remember thinking to myself, I really want to do one on resilience because, pretty much every successful business owner I know has gone through. When I tell them my story, I want to do a keynote. The amount of people that come up to me and tell me a similar story, or it's just so rife that it happens to a really high proportion of people that I've seen, that especially people a lot of high achievers that put a lot of pressure on themselves can get into this kind of state over a period of some period in their life or in their career. And I really wanted to make it a big part of it. And I think you're right, it's become a lot more acceptable now. There's more people talking about it, and there's more people seeking solutions as well, whether that's therapy or anything else that they do. I remember when I was dealing with that first bout, now I'm not saying I don't get anxiety anymore, but I'm really good at dealing with it. Like I can see it coming a mile away. I know what to do when it comes. It's almost like I've just learned how to deal with it really well. But back then I didn't, obviously.
You have a coping mechanism.
Yeah. I do.
You've put in coping mechanisms now and I'm the same, that, if an adversity happens, I have the strategies and the coping mechanisms put in place that to the outside world, that adversity must seem massive. But to me, it's like, okay, I can process this. I can do this. I know what I need to do. I'm recently home from 2 weeks away, and I've put a lot of stress on my body by not eating properly and just being in some emotional and stressful situations. And it's affected the MS. The MS is like starting to reflare, and it's like, well, if I don't take control of this and recognize the signs that are in front of me, in the next couple of weeks, I'm going to be in big, big trouble. So I think, the first step is recognizing those signs and then going, okay, let's pull everything back. What do I need to do in order to go on the right pathway rather than, deviate off on that sidetrack and end up in hospital?
Yeah, and whenever I face a problem, my coping mechanism, not so much for anxiety, but just for anything, is to find out everything I can about it. So I read, listen to podcasts, just with everything. When I had a baby, I read every baby book on the planet. That's kind of my way of getting my brain to understand and feel comfortable with it. And I did something similar with it with anxiety, and I started doing yoga. I cut out refined sugars and carbs. I can't say I continue to do any of those things now today, but I tried everything. I went to the gym more. I trained. I tried to be fit. I just did all those things. And then from all that stuff, I found some things that worked for me. And I still to this day, when I need them, although, I haven't got all those things happening all at once anymore. When I need them, I can call on those things, simple things that help me through it. But I think probably now, where it's been 12, 13, 14 years since then now that I first got it, I've gone to a point where I don't really have to even do the coping mechanisms that much. I can actually just see it coming now, and just knowing that it's coming, I can deal with it much better. It doesn't surprise me anymore. I don't get panic attacks. And I can just deal with it better now because I know it's coming, and I know, hey, you need a quiet day today, or you need to switch off, or whatever it is that I need to do to.
Then that bill comes under self-care. So you pay more attention then to your self-care when you know that it's coming than what you prior would have done, that 13 years ago, would have shoved those feelings aside or ignored them altogether and then got in really hot water.
Yeah, I think a lot of people they get high anxiety probably have high levels of empathy as well. We let things affect us a lot. And one of the things, I actually heard it on I was listening to your podcast actually, and I heard it on a previous guest, so I don't want to steal their thunder, but I really related to it, where you got to sort of put yourself first in those moments. And just, okay, you've got a family and you've got work and you've got everything else that's really important. But in those moments, the best thing you can do for everyone is just look after yourself. Because I know when I get in that moment where I had high anxiety, it affected my whole family. It wasn't just me, right? I mean, that anxiety.
And it does. I mean, yeah. So that's called the oxygen mask theory.
Yeah.
So when you're on a plane, the first thing the air hostess does and I was on a plane yesterday morning, I was nearly going to video it. Next plane I go on next month, I'm going to video the air hostess, because they stand up there and they say, in the event of emergency, put your mask on first before you help anyone else, including the child sitting beside you. Because if you don't have oxygen going in and taking care of your needs first, you are not good for anyone else. And that's the same in daily life. If you are not taking care of your self-care needs first, then you will not be, in the long term, good for anyone else.
Yeah, and one of the things that I learned about my anxiety, and I'm sure it's similar for others, is you think that the absolute worst case scenario possible is going to happen. It's almost like it's already happened. Mm-hmm. That's the emotions I went under. I remember a different part of my life, again, business related. I inherited a business that was going through a really difficult time, and potentially going into liquidation at the time. And my mind was, I'm going to lose the family home. I'm going to lose, and that only happens if you do like illegal things, which we had never done. It was not even really a possibility. But in my mind, I'd already lost the home. I'd already lost everything I'd ever worked for. My family was going to have to, I'd gone through this worst case scenario, and it was almost like it had already happened, rather than it's this 1% possibility.
Yeah.
But I think trying to just realize that try and sit back and the way I remember who told me this, but the way I tried to look at it is what would be the effect of this thing in 1 year or 5 years? Is it actually really that big a deal? And just trying to be real with yourself around, is this actually as big a deal as you're making it out to be? And trying to that 1 year, 5 year, is this in 1 year, 5 year, is it going to actually have any impact on anything that I do? And most of the time,
is it a mountain or is it a molehill?
Yeah, and what I found was most of the time the answer was no. It actually wasn't going to affect me in a year or in 5 years. It was a short-term thing that probably wasn't anywhere near as bad as I was making it out to be in my head.
Yeah. Have you read the book Making the Beast? We Make the Beast Beautiful?
No.
It's by Sarah Wilson. And I'd highly recommend it to anyone that has anxiety or knows someone with anxiety. And she's a journalist who actually wrote her story of what it was like to live with anxiety, being medicated and unmedicated, and finding her journey with it. It's not a very long book. It's only about 160, 170 pages long, but it's definitely worth a read. Especially listeners, if you're out there and you are suffering with anxiety and feel that, people aren't listening to you either. And that's another thing, anxiety is an invisible condition. You can't see it from the outside. So people who have never suffered with anxiety don't know what you're going through. And if you are like that, this is a really good book that explains what anxiety can actually do to a person's life. So, Bill, who are your role models in resilience?
Geez, that's a good question. Probably, at the risk of sounding like a mama's boy here, probably my mum. She's someone that, went through a really difficult childhood in that, she had two brothers that passed away at a very young age. She was basically almost like the matriarch of the family at about 13 because both her parents were working, all hours of the day just to put food on the table. She lived in Greece in a time where it was really, really tough. That's why a lot of Greeks came to Australia, right, at that time. So, she just to see her and the person that she was and having, she always put other people first, and the strength and just the resilience she's had in her life, probably the biggest role model that I've seen. And if I can be half as good a parent as she was to me after all that she went through, I'd be pretty happy with my kids.
That's good. How old are your kids?
They're 12 and 10. I've got two little girls, 12-year-olds in year 7.
Good luck with the teenage years.
I know, right? I took my, you're from Melbourne, so I took my daughter, my eldest daughter, she's 12 now. I took her to a nice restaurant, took her to 38 Chairs last night. We had a nice dinner, just the two of us, just to talk about some adult things, just to make sure that, she's okay and that kind of thing. It was surreal. I was sitting with my daughter.
I was going to say, was it surreal for you?
Yeah. I'm drinking a glass of wine. She's got her drink. She sat down. It was like talking to an adult almost, over dinner. It was great, but yeah, it's a different time for sure.
Oh, yeah, I know. Someone said to me the other day, does parenting get easier? And I went, no, it just changes in each chapter that you go into. It'll have its good and bad through all of it. I mean, my son's just turned 30 and my daughter's 26. And between the two of them, I've got 7 grandkids. So, that comes with with a whole different range of issues. And we've just all been up to Queensland celebrating my son's 30th birthday, and I still pinch myself that he's 30 because that makes me in my 50s. So it's like, we won't go there. Let's change the subject right now, Bill. Let me pick something else to talk about. What are some of your passions in life?
So, I'm at the risk of sounding like a bore. Like, I love working. Like, I love business. I'm just passionate about learning about all things business. Like, I love watching movies and I love watching, made up stories, but I read a lot, but I only read nonfiction. I just love learning, and that translates into business, or I translate it into business. So that's a big part of my life. And then, my other passions are, obviously my kids, watching their sport is always good fun for me. I love those days. I love watching them play sport, and I love the team environment and that kind of effort that they put in. And I love all kinds of sports myself. But I'm a failed football player. I would have loved to be a professional soccer player at some point in my life, but failed at that endeavor pretty young. So yeah, they're kind of my passions, I would say.
What's your favorite movie that features a person's inner strength to get up?
Favorite movie? You're going to laugh, but I'm going to say Shrek. I'm going to say Shrek, yeah.
No one's ever said that.
I used to, I love, I don't know what, I love that movie. I remember the first time I thought my kids were old enough, I wanted to watch it with me. Um, I don't know if that's, really being adversity or the inner strength, but it's just about, finding yourself. And I think it's the same kind of thing, I feel like Shrek, acted like this big tough guy because that's what he thought he had to be, but really he wasn't. And I've always, funnily enough, I've always sort of, I don't know if I've related to that character or what, but I've always, that's a character that
You're
I've
not
always,
green.
yeah,
So if you're
not
out
green,
there
but I'm,
listening,
but I'm
people,
bald.
it's not green. And you're not overweight anymore. So,
No, yeah, no. I
because
guess
how
maybe
old are you, Bill?
I'm 42,
Oh, you're a
42.
spring chicken.
Yeah, and I'm a kid at heart. Like honestly, I'm I still got I've got more energy than I can remember. I still feel young. When I walk into a restaurant and all my friends tell me everyone looks young in here, I feel like they're my age. I don't know if that's a
So,
delusion or
speaking
what,
of
but
speaking of being young and that, what are you doing to practice self-care and personal wellness?
yeah. So I go through stages. Like last year was probably one of the unhealthiest years I'd had in ages, and I think it was coming out of COVID where I was pretty healthy. Like I looked after myself, did a lot of walking, and just so I looked after myself. And I think last year, I don't know, I felt like we got let out of the cage. So I was doing a lot of dinners, probably a little bit too much drinking.
More
And then,
socializing. It
yeah,
was a year of socializing for
it
me
was.
and travel.
It really was, which doesn't relate to early mornings at the gym, unfortunately.
No.
So yeah, this year I've just gotten back into trying to get into a bit of a routine of healthy eating. It's simple things like just packing a lunch instead of eating out every day at work. And going to the gym more. So I'm counting my sessions this year. I want to do 150 sessions at the gym this year. I think I'm at about 59. So I'm a little bit behind, but I'm doing more every week now. So I think I'll still get there. But I find that the healthier I am, and that eating, I said to you, I cut out
Mm.
refined sugars and carbs a few years back when that all happened to me. I don't do that now, but just eating healthier, I feel better. And I don't know if it's one or the other, but when I've got anxiety, I get a stomach ache. I get a really sore stomach ache. And I don't know if one leads to the other. I don't know which one's first, but I find if I'm eating better, that happens less. I don't know if that's a medical
It's
thing. I
the
don't know if there's
sugar.
yeah,
Like,
maybe.
yeah, because sugar causes inflammation in your body and stress causes inflammation in your body. So you've got a double whammy happening there.
Yeah.
So if you're eating healthier, then you're eliminating one side of that as well.
Yeah,
So,
I'm going to butcher this, but there was a study out of the South Australian University recently, and it said that a very high percentage of people can it's more around depression, but can battle the depression by eating healthier and being active
yep.
rather than all the other things that people do now. And it was a long-term study, and I really, it related to me because I didn't like I got offered the medicine, and in fact I bought the medicine. Like I literally went and bought it, and I just said to myself, "Hey, try everything else first." And I'm not saying the medicine's not right for some people. I know it's helped a lot of people that I know that have needed it and helped. But for me, I just thought, let's try everything else first. And thankfully, I didn't need to take the medicine because that change in lifestyle had the effect that I needed.
Same. Look, I was on the medicine. I was given antidepressants back in 2001 when I was diagnosed, and I slept for 4 months. And 1 month I put on 5 kilos, and I'm like, nah,
Yeah.
no way. If I continue with this, I'm going to end up the size of a house again. And because I used to be morbidly obese, so I'm
Right.
very conscious of putting on weight, and thought there's got to be a better way for me personally to do this. So I went back to my psychologist and said, you can shove these pills where the sun don't shine. All I'm doing is sleeping and eating. And I'm going to try and sort it myself. And I know what my triggers and my warning signs are now if I feel that I'm going down that black hole, and I don't bottle it up anymore. So I see a counsellor regularly every couple of weeks, I pay her to listen to me vent and whinge and moan and groan rather than my family and my friends. And that helps reset my mind each time that I go there. And she'll give me feedback as well on, even a couple of years ago, I'm a different person than what I am now, mentally in there. But, with each adversity that I've faced, that'll whack on a little bit more of the depression. And I'm like, yep, no, okay, it's time to change my environment, watch happier movies, go out for a walk, get some sunshine, eat better, reduce the sugar. All of that is my natural medicine now in controlling that black dog.
Yeah, and whenever I whenever I the anxiety got under control, the other stuff, that depressive feeling, I find that much harder to sort of control myself. And I'll see if I feel that coming on, I'll go see someone. And I just can't recommend that highly enough. I go on and off a little bit. You don't always see them, but if I feel it coming on, I go back. And everyone's different. Like for me, the someone to listen to me talk doesn't really help me that much. But what really helps me is people explaining to me what I'm feeling. So I tell them what's happening, and then they tell me the medical term for whatever that is. Then you don't feel crazy anymore. You're like, oh, so other people feel this, and then they say to you, yeah, and this is what you're feeling, and this is what other people realize this is why, and that really helps me. It kind of normalizes it a bit, and it gives me my brain, the way my brain works is that, okay, I get that now. That's why I'm feeling like that, and it makes me sort of I can deal with it a lot better. So I think it's about
and that's with everything. That's with everything, Bill. When you get a label and you know what it is and you've been diagnosed with something, all of a sudden you're not questioning yourself. I've been diagnosed with a hell of a lot of things over the last 12 years, and it's like, just give me a label so then I know what I'm dealing with, and I can, deal with it and move on from it or help do it. And, going and seeing someone is top on the list. You can't build resilience without having support.
Yeah, it's
you need that external support.
Yeah, and it goes with, it's not just in this side. I had a cousin that very intelligent man. He's actually a teacher, and he went and got tested, and he had Asperger's, and instead of freaking out about it, he's like in his 40s. Instead of freaking out, he goes, "Oh, my whole life makes sense now." Like he felt so much better that was it, because then he's like, okay, that's why I feel the way I feel. And it's similar with me and some of the things that I've gone through. Just like you said, that labeling it, hey, this is a whatever thing that they call it in psychological circles, and it just gives you, okay, there's actually a name for it. I Google it, I learn about it, and it just makes me feel a lot better and makes me understand.
It's a coping strategy. That's a coping strategy and mechanism. Okay, well, I know what it is. I know the ins and outs of whatever they've labelled me on. And now I know how I can deal with it. So it's being proactive in your own healthcare as well. So, Bill, tell me about the 3 most influential people in your life and how they have impacted you.
Geez, it's a big one. I've got 2 that spring to mind pretty quickly. So I've already spoken about my mum. She's had a big impact on me because, I've always had a lot of support from her, and I'm, I dare say I wouldn't have been an easy kid growing up. I know for sure I wasn't. And just, that love and support, and just seeing, she's been a really good role model for me, just to how I interact with other people, and just, how I live my life to make sure that I'm doing right, doing the right things by people. She's been a big part of that. I would say my brother, who is quite the opposite emotionally. Like, we don't really, connect on a sort of emotional level, but he's been sort of a beacon of, what's possible for me. And, I've always looked up to him, and how he does certain things in his life as well. So there's sort of 2 people that probably spring to mind the most. And then I'll throw, I don't know, definitely, there's levels, there's one, these ones are a lot lower, but I'm a big reader and I love personalities, and I've always loved the personality of Richard Branson. I've always loved, that carefree but caring personality. Hey, you can actually make a lot of money and not be a total, I won't swear.
Dickhead.
Yeah, you can do that, and
We swear on this podcast.
yeah,
That's
good. All right. So you can actually make money and not be a prick.
Yes.
Right, because I used to have a really horrible relationship with money because I thought it was dirty, and I thought, there's people starving and all that. And I remember someone said to me once, they said, well, if you think it's so dirty and it's used for evil, well, why don't you make a bunch of it and use it for good? I said, shit,
Yeah.
that's a good point, right? So, I think that's kind of, I see a lot of that in Richard Branson and the way that he does it. Obviously, don't know him personally. He might not be a great person in real life, but from what I've read and from what I've seen, I love the way he goes about his life. I love that carefree nature that he's got, because
You always see him with a smile on his face.
Yeah, right. He's got a smile on his face. He made a lot of money, bought an island. Like, why not, right? And he's big in philanthropy, and the way he speaks about people. I love the way he speaks about people, the people that he works with. Is everything from employees to customers to his family. I just love the way he speaks about people, and that resonates with me.
If you could go back and give your 18-year-old self one piece of advice, what would it be?
There's a few that spring to mind, I tell you.
All right, well, you can do a couple.
Yeah, okay. So maybe just don't be so hard on yourself. Like I've always, no matter what I've done in my life, I always feel like I'm doing horribly. And if somebody asked me, my therapist asked me, if your 25-year-old self could see you now, what would they say? And I'm like, well, I wouldn't believe them that we achieved what we've achieved professionally. Like this never thought even possible. It didn't even cross my mind. And I was just so hard on myself younger from my sporting life, probably why I had no chance of making it, because I was so hard on myself in that. And then also in my professional life, like I've always been super hard on myself. And I'll just say, just be easy on yourself, just a little bit easier on yourself. I think some level of expectation and, not being completely fulfilled is probably not a horrible thing, but I think there's an opposite to that. And I think I've delved in the opposite of that for a long part of my life, probably less so now, but more so up until, very, very recently, a couple of years ago, probably.
And what would be the other thing?
Focus on what's important. I think a lot of young people probably lived like I did, but, I focused on what's not important, and read into that as you will, but there was a lot of, partying and drinking when there's probably should have been focusing on other things, and focusing on what's important, and not to say don't have fun, but just, maybe more balanced and focused life. I would say that, and I hope my kids live a more balanced life, because I think you can have a lot of fun but not do the crazy extreme things that maybe.
Mine would be persistence over perfection.
Yeah.
Doesn't have to be perfect, just be persistent.
Yeah, I've got to say, I'm someone that does that naturally. Like I think, like I said earlier, I think persistence is just getting up. It's, what's that saying? It's not about how many times you get knocked down. It's about how you get up.
How many times you stand up.
Yeah. And,
that was Henry Ford, wasn't it? Is that Henry Ford?
I don't know.
Get knocked down 7, get up 8.
Yeah, I'm not sure who said it. I think it might have been regurgitated by a few athletes since then as well. So, so I don't know. But yeah, I think that's so important, just in life, right? But also in my work, just that bounce back ability. That just something goes wrong, just knowing that you just got to keep persisting.
So, what are 3 books, or if you can't think of 3, just one, you'd recommend to my listeners, and why?
Got my bookshelf right here behind me, actually.
You have?
Yeah. Geez, I'm horrible with names, so you're putting me on the test here.
Grab one from behind you.
Yeah, you know what's funny is this bookshelf expired about 15 years or 10 years ago when I bought a Kindle. I bought a Kindle about when they first came out. Can I answer it a different way? Because I'm horrible with names and I don't remember names of books.
You can.
I think first read what you're passionate about so you can get into the habit of reading, because I think reading is, I was not academic as a kid, and I hated reading and I hated school. And then when I stopped playing football, I thought I better read some books about how to get ahead. And then I fell in love with reading, and now I read, a lot. I'm always reading at least one, usually 2 or 3 different books. I read everything from, and just read what I'm passionate about. So I read everything from, your business book to autobiographies about soccer managers to, the Dalai Lama had a journalist follow him around for 4 or 5 years. I read that book. I've read old books on Socrates and Plato. Just anything that can help you broaden your horizons. I think that's what I would recommend. And like I said, I've read everything from just pure entertainment to, hardcore learning where you can only read a few pages at a time. I've read books where you don't put it down until you finish it. You've read it all night, to, books that have taken me literally years to read. That book that I told you about where the journalist interviewed the Dalai Lama, it would have taken me 4 or 5 years to read it, because I could only read a few pages at a time, and then I've read another book in between because it's just, too much. But you learn so much, and I've reading's really made a meaningful impact to how I live my life. Like, just on that topic, like the Dalai Lama, talked a lot about love in his book, and he says, romantic love is easy. He said real love is, sticking by someone, being there for them in those tough times, trusting them and protecting them. And he talked about what real love is according to him, rather than this, high passion, romantic love. And, and that sort of changed the way I thought a little bit. When I read that, I'm like, shit, he's right. It's easy to have those high emotions but it's not as easy to stick by someone and do all those things. So, yeah. So
well, that's right. In a new relationship, like in a relationship, real love doesn't happen until after, around the 3rd year into that relationship, when the passion starts to subside, and then you start getting into, and the limerence goes, then you start getting into real love. And that's where a lot of relationships fail at that 2-3 year mark, because people are just looking for limerence. They're not actually looking for love.
Yeah,
and they want that buzz.
I don't know. I don't know what that word limerence is, but I call it. I'm going to use my dumbed down version. I call it the Hollywood love. That Hollywood love story. That that can't last forever, right? I don't care who you are.
No,
and it's about having something deeper that And I would go as far as to say, not only romantic relationships, but friendships, business partnerships. There's got to be some type of love there. Whether it's trust or protection. Or
there has to be trust in all relationships.
Yeah,
definitely has to be trust in whether it's a business relationship, your friendship, because you're confiding in people, your inner thoughts, and if you can't trust that person, then there's a serious problem there with it. We are the sum of the 5 people that we hang around. And if you're hanging around with people that are negative and that you can't trust, find a new tribe.
Yeah.
Find someone that will support you.
Yeah, it's funny because I think trust is a huge one, and I find trust is best. It's earned, but also being super vulnerable is the best way for me. I found to build trust, and I was that guy that I still find it really hard to talk about my feelings to my friends, especially. Like I probably talk to you more about my feelings than I've ever spoken to my friends, in my life. But there's
you're about to hear it, that, don't you, Bill?
I've been talking about this for some time some time now. I was going to say just this vulnerability is pretty new for me. Probably a few years, probably since the last big episode that I had, which was probably 4 years ago. I think I came out of that way more humble and I just felt like I didn't more humble, but also I just cared a lot less about what other people thought, and I thought I'm just going to be true and real and talk about talk about these things to people, and if that makes them uncomfortable or they don't want to be around that, then I just wasn't fazed anymore. I just thought, well, it's fine, like then I don't want them around. So I think that part of it's important. And I think also, when you talk about coping mechanisms and, resilience, I think, resilience is important, but it's not just about being tough and bottling it all up. I think some people think resilience means that, you just don't have feelings.
Or you suck it up and you just move on.
Yeah.
That's not what resilience is.
No. Often it's about that vulnerability, about, asking for help, when things, having coping mechanisms, and then, having also that second level, which is some kind of help, having good support networks. Like I can't, I had such a supportive wife through those episodes. Geez, it's hard. It must be hard to be a partner of someone that goes through that. I think back at those times now, and I'm like, shit, it would have been really, really hard, So just
and hard for people that don't have supportive partners. And I can remember sitting at my counsellor's office when I was going through chemo, doing the whole, oh, poor me. I haven't got a partner that will support me through this, because I did my whole cancer journey by myself, not being in a relationship at that time. And she turned around and she's like when someone throws a bucket of cold water on you and like reality fucking hits you in the head. Well, she threw that bucket of cold water over me that day, and she goes, you need to stop and think. If you're in any one of your past relationships, and I've had some really shitty relationships, I'm no longer that person that was in those shitty relationships. But if you're in one of those shitty relationships and you were facing what you're facing now, would that be the same? Would it be twice as hard? And I'm like, oh my God. oh my God. Yes, you're right. Okay, I'm actually in a better position now that I'm single facing this than if I had been in one of those really bad relationships that had no support for me and I had to fully support them. So, yeah, it was a big wake-up call in having that support. Talking about vulnerability, and I know, listeners, I've mentioned this before in some of my podcasts, but Bill, have you ever sat and listened or watched Brene Brown's talk on vulnerability?
Is it a TED talk?
It's a TED talk, but she's also got it on Netflix. There's a show on Netflix about Brene Brown. I would highly recommend.
The TED talk.
Yeah, I've watched it about 6 times. I think every time I watch it, I get something more out of it. But everyone should, watch that on being vulnerable.
I think, vulnerability is such a big thing. I remember one of my business partner in the property law firm that we've got many, many years ago when he was just my lawyer. He was talking about how he manages his team. And this is a, big, strong Persian man, goes to the gym a lot, exterior, tattoos, the exterior, he's, real tough. And he was saying to me that one of the best things he's ever done was to be super vulnerable with his team members and how much that made an impact to the way his business was run. And I just remember thinking at the time, shit, I'm going to do more of that. I'm going to be more vulnerable with not only at work, but in other settings. And, sometimes you just pick little things up, from unexpected sources that can make an impact. And that TED Talk's probably similar, right?
Yeah, most definitely. And I'm all about being authentic. What you see and hear me on camera is the person I am. As soon as that all goes away, I'm no different than what you see now. Well, actually, my hair's probably done a little bit better.
Yeah.
Then, on a long weekend, sitting here on a Monday night on a long weekend, when the rest of the world had a holiday and we didn't. Isn't that right, Bill?
Yeah, that's it. I've got to say, it took me a while, but I'm very much what you see is what you get. The way I'm talking to you now is how I talk to my mates, is how I talk in a boardroom, is how I talk, presenting to shareholders at an annual general meeting. It's just the way I am. And I remember as a kid always thinking I looked younger when I was little. I was this little skinny thing, and I used to wear, the suit and the shirt, and I used to try and grow stubble. I used to try and be this person. And I hate, like, to this day, whenever I put a tie on, I remember to those days. It's almost like triggering. I remember to those days that I felt like I had force to do, and I feel like I'm being choked, even though I've got it loose. I feel like I'm being choked by it, and I hate wearing ties to this day. I didn't even wear one at my wedding. And because I just, that whole thought of I was trying to be someone else when I was wearing a tie.
Well, you got to be authentic. You got to be authentic to yourself. And then when you are authentic to yourself, you don't then have to waste energy about pretending you're something that you're not. It's authenticity will get you a long way in this world, and you can't stuff up when you're being authentic.
Yeah, I feel like that. I feel that way about lying. I just don't have the mental energy to remember lies.
Yeah. I had an ex-husband that didn't live by that, however.
Yeah.
Moving right along. It's one of the reasons why we broke up. He was a really, really bad liar. He had a terrible memory and he would lie. And it's like, hang on.
That's me.
That's not what he said.
I've got a shit memory. I've got horrible. Like if I don't write it down or put it in my diary, I'm in trouble. So. Yeah.
Have you listened to or watched again the TEDx talk? Though there is a really good book. I listen to lots of Audible books while I'm painting, so I kind of multitask there. Mel Robbins' 5-second rule was a game changer for me.
Again, horrible names, but I did watch a TED talk on memory. And was it the guy that's the one like the memory champion?
No, this is a woman. So she talks about actioning things. When you drop food on the floor and if it's been there less than 5 seconds, you can still eat it. So you've actioned actually picking it up within that 5 seconds. It's the same thing with every task that you do. If you have a really brilliant idea, action it. So actioning can be just writing down that idea somewhere in your planner or wherever you keep things. What's another example? So when the alarm clock goes off, do you hit snooze?
No.
Right.
But I used
to. So
when
the alarm clock goes off, you get out of bed and you action it. If you wanted that extra 5 minutes sleep, set the alarm so it's 5 minutes later.
Yeah.
All right. So it's really, really good. Watch her TEDx talk on it. It was a game changer in the amount of stuff that I get done. And one thing, you'll have a great idea about something and then you think, oh, I'll remember that. And then the next thing someone's invented it or gone and done it. And it's like, oh, I had that idea.
Yeah.
You might have, but you didn't action on it. So it's all in the first 5 seconds.
Yeah. I actually find that's really important part of, especially when I'm feeling a little bit down, which makes you tired and not want to do things. Just actually getting active, that when the alarm clock goes, just jump, try and do your best to get out of bed. When you see yourself getting tired or whatever, getting up and doing something so that you're constantly sort of, your body's moving, your blood's flowing. I think that helps a lot, even when you're getting, those negative sort of emotions.
So exercise is a proven thing that will boost your mood, and making sure that you get enough sleep as well. Now, I was recently talking about this on my other podcast series called MS Unmasked, and Alison and I were talking last week about for every hour that you go to sleep before midnight equates to 2 hours after midnight. So if you go to bed at 8 o'clock at night and get up at 10 o'clock at night and get up at 6 o'clock in the morning, instead of getting 8 hours sleep, that equivalates out to 10 hours sleep. Yeah. Because the quality of sleep that you're getting before midnight is far better than after midnight. Now, I went to bed the other night at around about 8:30, 9 o'clock, which is exceptionally early for me. And I woke up at midnight like I'd been asleep for 12 hours. Yeah. I had to get up and pee. And and I make sure I don't turn the light on or anything so I'm not like startled from it. But I'm like, wow, that was such a good sleep. I couldn't wait to get back in and then do the next 6 hours of it.
Sleep's such a big one. It's like, for energy levels and, especially when you're feeling down, trying, just forcing yourself to, try and get into bed and try and get enough sleep. Whenever I struggle to sleep, I've got like a remedy that works almost 100% of the time. And I just find like not a bad podcast, but a boring one. Like I love history. So I'll put in like hardcore history or one of those ones, which I'm interested in, but also he's got this monotonous sort of voice. So he just puts me to bed like a baby. And while I'm trying to fall asleep, I've got something interesting to listen to as well. So, just things like that help me get to sleep.
Listeners, that's not the Resilience Mindset
No,
podcast
not at all.
that Bill's listening to. It's someone else's.
That's it.
Okay, let's get on to some quirky questions. If you could live anywhere in the world, where would it be?
I would say Melbourne, Australia. However, I would love to spend a good portion of my time in the island of Crete in Greece.
Nice. Is it on your bucket list?
On
the vision board?
Yeah, well, I'd love to spend more time there when I can, So eventually I'd love to be able to spend 3 months there every year. So yeah, that's definitely something that I'm thinking about. But realistically, that won't be until the kids are grown. So
yeah, which believe you me, that won't take very long because hey, I blinked and my son turned 30. What was your favourite subject in school?
Well, I mean, I love sports at PE, but mathematics. I've always loved it. I've always loved numbers, and always loved mathematics. I love problem solving, and I wasn't the best at maths, but I really enjoyed it, and I just love solving problems. So that's always been a big one for me.
I'm jealous. I can't count anymore. That's one of my brain damages from the MS. That I lost the ability to count about 13 years ago.
Oh,
so.
wow.
I'm better than what I was, and thank God we can use calculators. I often laugh when I went through school, and probably when you did as well. The teachers used to say, "You won't be walking around with a calculator in your pocket all the time." How wrong were they?
I actually I showed my daughter how to use ChatGPT for her homework now, and she was just amazed. And I said,
I love ChatGPT, but that's a whole different podcast, that one. That it is. Okay, pineapple on pizza, yes or no?
I would say no, but I'm not passionate about it. Do your thing. You want pineapple, go for it. Yeah.
Safe answer. I'm a pineapple on pizza girl.
Yeah.
Okay, tea, coffee, hot chocolate, or red wine?
Like coffee, lots of it, just as much as I can take. Yeah.
I'm allergic to coffee, so... Okay, what's another one? What's your favorite food?
Wood-fired margarita pizza. I just nice. Love the simple flavors and that wood-fired taste, especially from a really good place. Grady in Melbourne or one of those ones. Nothing beats that for me. Simple food.
No, mine's pork belly.
Oh yeah, yum.
Yeah. What's one question you wish I'd asked you, and how would you have answered?
Jeez, one question I wish you'd asked me.
We have tough questions on this podcast.
Yeah. That's a good one. I wish we maybe that we had elaborated on some of the coping mechanism stuff that I went through, because I think that might help some people. I don't know, they don't work for everyone, but what I did maybe.
So let's elaborate on. We've got a couple of minutes, so let's do that now.
Okay. So
what are some of the coping mechanisms?
Yeah. So there's probably a few that I learned, and like I said, over time you probably won't even need them because you just see it coming and be able to deal with it. But one of the things that I did was breath work. So really simple method of there's 4 breaths in, hold for 4 breaths, 4 breaths out, hold for count 4 in. Hold, count 4 out, hold. So 4 at each time, so 16-second cycle. That, if you do that for 2 or 3 minutes, just brings your heart rate down and brings anxiety down. I normally do that while I'm doing something else, which is either focusing on an object. So I can see like a ream of paper, I think that is behind you. I would focus on that ream of paper and only focus on that. And I'd look at all the things. I'll see there's a white bit, there's some writing there. What does that writing say that overlaps to the black bit? What's on that black bit? And I'll just try and go through, really concentrate just on that one object while I'm doing my breath work for 2 or 3 minutes. And what that usually does for me is it doesn't let me get those really negative thoughts or any thoughts other than that ream of paper and my breath. And then one thing that I learned in my short stint as a yogi and when I was doing yoga was this amazing pose, which is basically just lying down. It's called Shavasana. And you lie down really flat and look it up so you do it the right way. But and your arms open up, palms open, legs open wide, falling to the side. I usually do the breath work first for a couple of minutes and then get into that and just go into my normal breathing rhythm, and just let thoughts come into my head. If I need to feel what those thoughts are, let them go again. In yoga, they talk about letting them float away, and that's a really good way to think about it. You think about the thought floating away, and then I use that time once I've sort of gotten to a pace of peace to loosen my body. So I start at the top of my head and I work all the way down. Loosen your eyebrows, loosen your nose, loosen your cheeks, and just actually feel it happening as you're talking about it. And by the end of doing that, I just feel, it feels like you've had a massage. You just feel, that feeling you get when you feel a massage, you're almost in a state of bliss. That's how I feel after doing that. And if I feel anxious coming on, I'll try and do that every morning if I can. And it takes 5 or so minutes. And that one's huge for me. Both of those helped me a lot. I'd normally do this, the second one, the Shavasana in a dark room. That helped me a lot during that time. And I've got to say now, I don't really need that anymore, because, like I said earlier, my coping mechanism now is just I can see it coming a mile away, understand what it is, and I just don't let it get a hold of me like I used to.
There's some good advice there. Definitely. I've done restorative yoga. So that was one of the positions that we did in restorative yoga. I tried other yoga and Pilates, but I get the giggles at the back of the room. So
I've got to say,
I'm trying to do all the other poses, but restorative is something far more gentle.
Yoga is a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. Like it's a really decent workout. Like I remember I went there in tracksuit pants and a t-shirt the first time. People were looking at me funny. I never made that mistake again. It's pretty hard work, especially if you're doing, your flow type style yoga. It's hard work. Even the yin yoga, where you got to hold poses for a long time, really hard mentally and hard physically to really get deep into those. I recommend it for everyone that, if you have got a bit of anxiety, if you can bring yourself to do it, it really helps.
Awesome suggestions. So, Bill, we're going to wrap it up now. Where can my listeners find you online?
Yeah, Instagram at BillNico10, LinkedIn, same thing, at BillNico10. They're sort of the two platforms that I use the most. I talk about a lot of topics, resilience being one of them. But if you're in business, then there's some I do some keynotes and some business coaching, executive coaching as well. And you can learn a lot more. I put quite a bit of content out on topics related to that, whether that's growth, customer experience, leadership, and resilience, actually. So one of the big topics that I talk about.
Fantastic. Well, I'd like to thank you today for being on the Resilience Mindset podcast. It's been informative for me as well, learning some things, and I loved your definition on resilience.
Yeah, the shock absorber. No, it's been great to be on, and I love talking about this stuff. 3 or 4 years ago, I would have been freaking out about talking about this, and now it just feels so natural and so. And I honestly, other than all the other topics are great and they help people, but I feel like this is probably the most important one. So I'm really glad that there's someone doing this that you're doing. So well done.
Thanks. So remember, listeners, until next time, stay resilient.
With over 11 years public speaking expertise, Justine thrives on delivering a powerful and empowering keynote to audiences of all sizes. From a packed room of 500 people to an intimate gathering of 50 people, Justine will command the room with her inspiring journey and engaging anecdotes. Email hello@justinemartin.com.au to book Justine for your next event. We hope you enjoyed the Resilience Mindset podcast. Remember to subscribe to the podcast to get your weekly fix listening to Resilience Queen Justine Martin. Follow Justine on social media at Resilience Mindset or log on to justinemartin.com.au. And until next time, remember, life doesn't get easier or more forgiving. We get stronger and more resilient.